Welcome to this new Manwha recap. Let's dive in and I hope you enjoy it. The Fog Flower Party was a group gathered to fight to the death. Their leader is known as the Undead, a berserker named Manwha who lives solely to slay monsters. The party is currently attempting to conquer the Dungeon of Abyss, one of the 8 black dungeons in the world. So far, no one has been successful in clearing it. Manwha is battling a horde of deadly creatures, his sword covered with the blue mana. With a fierce shout, he beheads an ogre-like creature. Just then a serpent clamps down on his arm. He raises his sword and slams its hilt into the creature, finishing it off. As he takes a moment to catch his breath, a disfigured monstrosity with spiky fingers charges towards him. Manwha strikes at its head, but the creature bites down on his sword, snapping the blade in two. It then smashes him aside with a spiked hand. Still, after a moment, he manages to kill it. Looking around, he notices that he is the only one alive. Despite his injuries, Manwha rises to face the final boss, pushing open the massive stone doors leading to the inner room. Darkness surrounds him, but a massive eyeball belonging to the master of the dungeon opens and unleashes a flurry of attacks, leaving Manwha riddled with holes. At his side, Li Yujung appears, determined not to let him die. Tears streaming down her face, she tends to his wounds, but she knows that they are too severe. With a desperate resolve, Li Yujung realizes that a miracle is the only way to save Manwha. Memories of their past flash through his mind as he apologizes to her for not treating her better. In a flash of golden light, she manages to activate the miracle, and Manwha is surrounded by a bright white light. As he opens his eyes, he sees his parents looking down at him with adoration, cooing like parents to a newborn. It seems his consciousness and memories have returned to his 1-year-old body. Manwha remembers how they were killed by monsters when he was 6 in his previous life and clutches his fist, promising to change the tragic future now that he has another chance. All the while, his parents dote over their adorable baby, unaware of his thoughts. Though his infant body currently limits his actions, he strives to improve his mobility by rolling over, cheered on by his doting elder sister, Manwha. Through his vague memories, he recalls Manwha holding him tightly after their parents were killed by monsters, promising to protect him. As months pass, he reaches 9 months of age and meditates, aware of the mana permeating his surroundings. He notes that Manwha possesses a significant amount of mana, which can lead to a harmful condition, mana pycnosis. Manwha offers her help in teaching him how to walk, and with her support, he learns to walk and talk by the time he reaches 4 years old. One day, Manwha takes him to the neighborhood playground where they encounter Kim Minhai, who greets him with a sour expression. Undeterred, Manwha teases Minji playfully as they all decide to play cops and robbers. As the sun sets, the siblings walk home, speaking about the fun time they had. Suddenly, a wild dog appears, barking at them from an alley. Manwha bravely steps in front of her brother, promising to protect him, and he remembers her making the same vow in his past life. Determined to protect his family this time around, Manwha steps forward and unleashes a massive amount of mana, pressuring the dog into submission. Manwha, awed by her brother's power, requests him to teach her how to do the same. He agrees, and they head home, with Manwha promising to himself that he will protect his family. Manwha observes his sister's unsuccessful attempts to spin a top using her mana. He provides her with some guidance, pointing out her mistakes. Noticing her exhaustion, he reflects on the fact that despite possessing a large mana pool, her control over it is poor. Determined, his sister rolls up her sleeves and once again infuses mana into the top. However, her excitement causes an excessive release of mana, resulting in the top bouncing all around the room. Later that night, the entire family relaxes on the couch, watching the television. His mother reminds Manwha that he will be turning 6 soon. Recalling his promise to attend kindergarten once he turns 6, he feels a twinge of annoyance at the thought of spending time with immature and crying children. As he glances back at the TV, a news reporter visits the Jongmyo Shrine. Manwha recalls this event from his past life. In that previous life, when humanity discovered the use of mana, people devoted as much time as possible to using their abilities. Unfortunately, the uncontrolled release of vast amounts of mana into the surroundings led to the emergence of various creatures. Calamity struck when hordes of monsters suddenly attacked Korea, resulting in the loss of 30% of the population. The existing governments collapsed, making way for a new structure centered around powerful individuals, the players and the wealthy. During this chaotic period, many cities became disconnected, with isolated areas occupied by monsters. Amidst this chaos, a glimmer of hope appeared. On the television screen, goddess Lim Ga-yul is seen approaching an altar. A former actress, she now possessed the ability to suppress rampant mana and disperse its energy, a gift known as the White Grace. The players who protected the altar became known as the 12 Thrones. While all players are under the management of the Mana Management Bureau, the strongest among them form their own clans, thereby ignoring the jurisdiction of the Bureau. As Lim Ga-yul reaches the altar, she directs her mana towards the orb placed upon it. In an instant, a radiant light covers across the sky, enveloping the entirety of Korea. This shining barrier serves to prevent the uncontrolled spread of mana. Like countless others, Non-Yunha's sister rushes to the veranda, her gaze fixed upon the colorful sky. Across Korea, people join their hands in prayer, seeking happiness and peace for their families. Non-Yunha, who didn't believe in God due to the horrors and destruction he witnessed, now finds himself watching his family and realizing that he has been granted another chance to make things right. He offers a prayer for the safety of his family. After reaching the age of 6, Yunha is enrolled in Duan kindergarten. When asked by teacher Teo to introduce himself to the class, he gives a short response, merely stating his name. Suddenly, a shout from the class catches his attention, and he recognizes Kim Minji. It appears that she is also in his new class. Observing her sour expression, Yuna playfully teases her by calling her the nickname Stick Mitty. As the introductions conclude, the whole class gathers around him, bombarding him with various questions. Finally, managing to slip away from the energetic and excitable children, Yuna finds himself in the children's book corner. Although these books are meant for younger children, at least he can pass the time by reading them. Pulling up a chair, he sits at the same table as Jeong Haeng, a girl with purple hair and a red ribbon in her hair. Suddenly, 3 boys approach them, taunting her for spending so much time reading books. The ringleader, Choi Yoon-hyuk, begins teasing the girl and snatches her ribbon away. Annoyed by the interruption, Yuna confronts the 3 bullies, remarking on their childish behavior. Feeling insulted, Yoon-hyuk attempts to punch him, but Yuna effortlessly dodges and extends his foot, causing Yoon-hyuk to trip and crash forward. Unable to halt his momentum, Yuna returns the ribbon to Haeng, advising her to be more careful. With a fierce look directed at the bullies, they quickly flee, promising revenge in the future. As the girl expresses her gratitude for his help, Yuna realizes that most of the students in the class possess average levels of mana, while Choi Yoon-hyuk and Kim Minji have above average quantities. Focusing his mana into his eyes, he staggers backward, astonished by the girl's overwhelming mana presence. He realizes that her mana surpasses even his sister's, and she also possesses reasonable control over it. Examining her closely, he wonders why he never heard of her in his previous life. With her exceptional talents, she could easily become one of the 12 Thrones or their students, known as Seeds. Extending his hands, he offers to be friends with her. As she shyly accepts, he believes it will be beneficial to stay close to someone with such remarkable abilities. After all, mana is equal to power in this world. Later that day, at home, Yuna notices his mother holding the paper carnation they made at school for Parents' Day. He hadn't intended to tell her about it, but she seems to have discovered it in his bag. In the next moment, his sister presents the paper carnation she made as well. Observing that Yuna made 3 carnations, his mother is confused, assuming he made one for his sister. However, only Yuna knows that he actually made it for his grandmother in his mind. In his previous life, as an orphan, Yuna was forced to make paper carnations at school, as the entire class attempted it. Later, the crumpled papers he tucked away in his bag were always found by his grandmother, who would beautifully display them in the house. Yet, despite being aware of this, Yuna never directly offered them to his grandmother, fearing that by doing so, he would diminish the hatred he held for the monsters and reduce the longing he had for his parents. Until her passing, he never expressed his gratitude to her. But this life will be different. On May 4th, the government lifted the road restrictions, allowing the public to reunite with their families for the upcoming month. This was the day the Kraken appeared and his parents died. As his parents mention wanting to visit Grandma for the holidays, he realizes that he must prevent them from leaving tomorrow. Yuna realizes that he must give a childlike reason to avoid arousing suspicion from his parents. After a moment of thought, a bright smile spreads across his face, and he enthusiastically suggests visiting the amusement park near their home and riding the Viking-themed ride. His sister, attracted by the idea of visiting the park, also expresses her agreement. Taking into account they have never been to the park before due to safety concerns, their parents agree to their request. Yuna's happiness begins to swell. Even if he can't prevent the Kraken from wreaking destruction, he can at least protect his family from its clutches. However, his thoughts are interrupted by the ringing of his mother's phone. Yunha's expression turns to horror as his mother shares the news that their grandmother has just collapsed at her home. As his parents decide to visit their grandmother, his mother holds his hand and asks if they can postpone their trip to the amusement park. Reluctantly accepting, and noticing the worried looks on his parents' faces, Yuna contemplates how his actions to alter the future may have caused his grandmother's sudden illness. He fears that pushing too hard might lead to dangerous consequences. The only change he can make in this new life is himself. If he can't prevent his family from encountering the Krakens, he will have to attack it head-on and protect his loved ones. The Manwha Management Bureau classifies monsters based on their threat levels, ranging from rank 9, which denotes creatures that primarily damage the environment, to the most perilous rank 1 monsters, capable of posing a dire threat to humanity's existence as a whole. Krakens fall under the category of rank 3 monsters, which bring about administrative paralysis at a government level, akin to a catastrophic disaster caused by an individual entity. Drawing from his past life, Yuna recalls that he must buy time until the 12 thrones arrive to defeat the Kraken. With this in mind, he secretly packs a pair of scissors and a utility knife as his only available weapons. Anything else, and his mother will notice it. Later, while the family finds themselves trapped in a traffic jam on the Seongsan Bridge, Yuna silently wishes that perhaps the Kraken may not make an appearance. However, his hopes are shattered when a tremendous explosion sounds ahead, sending debris from the damaged bridge flying above their car. Yuna grits his teeth in fear as he gazes in terror at the colossal purple creature, its numerous tentacles thrashing about, approaching them while destroying the bridge. The Kraken's massive tentacles tear through the bridge, causing boulders and debris to rain down on cars, crushing them. The terrified drivers abandon their vehicles and flee in the opposite direction. In the midst of this chaos, a group of players arrive on the scene. Without warning, one of the Kraken's tentacles slams down on a player, crushing him to death and spilling blood everywhere. Witnessing this gruesome scene, the other low-ranking players quickly flee, leaving the crowd to curse their cowardice. Yuna's parents sit frozen with fear in their car, their expressions reflecting their terror. Despite their dread, they slowly leave the vehicle, but Yuna is unable to move her legs due to shock. Her father carries her in his arms as they attempt to escape. Suddenly, a horde of rank 7 monsters, known as the Divers, attack the veteran players who are escorting the public away from the bridge. The blue creatures, possessing sharp teeth and gills on their limbs, attack the players with spears. A woman with healing magic rushes forward to assist the wounded but is impaled by a spear. As this chaos unfolds around them, Yuna's family runs away from the Kraken, doing their best to ignore the screams all around them. Suddenly, the Kraken snatches up a few of the vehicles and throws them ahead, blocking the road and trapping the humans. From his previous life, Yuna remembers that support from the 12 thrones will not arrive for another 30 minutes, and it has only been a few minutes since the Kraken first appeared. The few players who remain can protect them from the Divers, but not from the Kraken itself. Taking a deep breath, Yuna retrieves a pair of scissors and a cutter from his bag. He has been preparing for this moment since the start and will put his life on the line to protect his family. Turning to his parents, he requests them to stay safe until reinforcements arrive. He asks Yuna to protect their parents should any divers break through the players and reach them, knowing that only Yuna can use Manwha besides him. With determination in his heart, he dashes towards the Kraken, his parents' voices ringing out behind him. Yuna runs towards the Kraken, imbuing his feet with Manwha to increase his speed. He effortlessly jumps over the broken bridge and the ruined vehicles, leaving behind a trail of Manwha. This incredible technique, called Heavenly Steps, allows him to move with lightning-fast agility, but he feels a sudden jolt of pain throughout his body. Heavenly Steps is a skill he learned in his previous life, and using it now, with his childlike body, proves too much for him. Nevertheless, he bears the pain, dodging everything in his path and charging forward. Some bystanders scream at him that it's too dangerous to approach the Kraken, but Yuna pays them no mind. Even the divers notice and move to attack him. In response, Yuna coats his paper cutter with Manwha, creating a sharp, blue edge along its length. With this weapon, he finishes off the divers with ease while dodging their attacks. As he kills the monsters, memories of his actions as the undead in his previous life start overlapping with his current movements. In those moments, he is not just non-Yuna, but the undead. After defeating the last of the divers, Yuna notices that the blade of his paper cutter has broken. But he was prepared for this and quickly pulls out the knife from his pocket, separating it into 2 parts. Rushing towards the Kraken again, He dodges its tentacles and jumps across one of them, running towards its main body. Finally, he jumps onto its skull and stabs his weapon-coated blades into its thick skin. But just as he strikes, Yuna notices a tentacle moving towards him. He jumps away from the skull to evade the attack and throws down the ruined blade, holding the last one tightly in his hand. As Yuna leaps towards the Kraken's skull, a tentacle intercepts him in midair, violently smashing him onto the bridge. He holds his blade, realizing that his mana is nearly depleted. The Kraken smashes the pillars beneath Yuna, causing the bridge to crumble beneath him. With quick reflexes, he jumps across the breaking pieces and reaches a stable portion of the bridge, while the rest collapses into the ocean. Noticing this, the Kraken swings a truck towards Yuna with its tentacles. Reacting swiftly, he curses the creature and mana erupts around him, enveloping his entire body in a blue vapor. Screaming with rage, he cuts the truck in half with the extended length of his mana-coated blade. But moments later, his vision blurs and he collapses to the floor. His body refuses to move, drained of all mana. He screams at himself, desperate to regain consciousness, knowing that if he falls unconsciousness now, all his previous efforts will go to waste. Finally, with sheer determination, he manages to press his fist against the floor and attempts to push himself up. Thoughts of his family and their smiles enter his mind, reminding him of what he stands to lose if he gives up. Just as Yuna braces himself for the incoming tentacle, tears streaming down his face, he hears his sister's voice and feels her arms encircling his neck. In an instant, a golden barrier materializes around them, erasing the approaching tentacles and shielding them from the divers within its radius. Looking at his sister, Yuna realizes that she has activated a miracle. Before his second life, only 4 individuals were known to possess this gift. Observing his sister's mana levels throughout his current life, he had already wondered if she too might possess the power of a miracle. Hearing her assure him of his safety, Yuna feels his injuries swiftly healing. However, he knows that there is a significant cost associated with this miracle. Just then, Yuna closes her eyes, falling into a peaceful sleep. Tenderly holding her body, Yuna realizes that her activation of the miracle has depleted nearly all of her mana. Placing her gently on the bridge, he turns his gaze towards the Kraken. Mana surges around him with a newfound intensity. Yuna slashes off the approaching tentacle with his bare hands surrounded with mana, his eyes filled with determination. As the Kraken's tentacles lunge towards him, Yuna infuses his hand with mana, swiftly cutting off the incoming tentacles. With his mana fully replenished, he is full of confidence, knowing he can protect his family and change the course of the future. All that remains is to await the arrival of the 12 thrones. Stepping back a few minutes in time, we witness one of the 12 thrones seated in a car on the bridge. Suddenly, he senses a tremendous surge of mana. Consulting his contact, he confirms that it is a rank 3 Kraken, his eyes ablaze with excitement. The driver, confused by his apparent delight in encountering a dangerous monster, observes as the player moves out of the car, unsheathing his sword. With a confident declaration, he informs the driver that he will reach the scene faster on foot. Mana courses around him, and in a blur, the player dashes forward, disappearing from sight. The driver sighs, acknowledging the expected behavior of the Blade Clan's clan lord, the flame demon, Kang Hyuncheol, known for his thirst for formidable battles. 30 minutes later, Kang Hyuncheol arrives at the scene. He swiftly slashes away the divers, then directs his gaze towards the golden barrier formed by Yuna's miracle. Relief washes over Yuna as he recognizes the arrival of the 12 Thrones flame demon, Kang Hyuncheol, famous for his pyrokinesis, a gift that grants him absolute control over flames. Glancing back at the siblings, Kang notices the flow of mana surrounding the girl, and deduces that she must have fallen unconscious after activating her magic. He realizes that the boy must have shielded her from the Kraken's attacks. Kang thinks of the potential within these 2 young individuals and cannot help but picture the power they will possess as they mature. Instructing the children to stay back, he assures them that he will take care of the Kraken and protect them. In Yuna's past life, Kang Hyuncheol sought him out, hearing the tales of the undead's immense strength. Because of Yuna's reputation, Kang challenged him to a fight, curious to test his own abilities against the formidable opponent. Reluctantly, Yuna had no choice but to engage in a spar with Kang Hyuncheol. Looking at the flame demon's back, he remembers how he was unable to emerge victorious against him. Kang's power grew with each encounter because of his gift. He is truly a monster born for the battlefield. Awaiting the emergence of the Kraken, Kang taunts the creature, urging it to show itself. At that moment, the Kraken destroys the remaining pillars of the bridge, leaving him wondering how to fight the colossal monster while guarding the children. Suddenly, pillars of mana materialize beneath the crumbling bridge, supporting its structure. Kang looks up to the sky, spotting a helicopter hovering above. A member of the 12 Thrones, Park Hyrim, has just arrived. Expressing gratitude for her timely presence, she assures them that more reinforcements will arrive soon, urging them to hold on a little longer. Park Hyrim, wielding her staff, casts supportive spells on Kang, while he requests her to protect the children during the upcoming battle. Soon, the Kraken emerges from the depths of the water. Kang leaps into action, effortlessly walking on the water's surface, flames enveloping his entire body. The Kraken attacks with its tentacles but is swiftly defeated, its massive form engulfed in flames. Witnessing the victory, Yuna's face breaks into a smile, relieved that the situation has come to an end. As the approaching helicopter draws near, Park Hyrim approaches the children to heal them. Reaching them, she realizes none of them have any wounds or injuries, realizing that the earlier light she saw must be a miracle. Amazed at the idea of witnessing a miracle, she moves her hand forward. Just then Yuna narrows his eyes, a cold killing intent wafting from him, threatening her not to touch his sister. As the rest of the rescue squad soon arrives, she mentions that they will soon be admitted to a hospital. In the hospital room, Yuna watches the news report on the sudden appearance of a Kraken at Seongsan Bridge. Shifting his gaze from the television to his sleeping sister, he recalls how the doctor informed him about her mana exhaustion. Fortunately, she has already consumed a mana potion, and will recover soon, relieving him of worry. Reflecting on the memory of his parents' death in his previous life, a faint smile appears on his lips as he realizes he has successfully altered his family's future. Suddenly, his parents' voices ring through the air, calling out their names as they stop outside the hospital room. Observing the expressions on their faces, Yuna realizes that he is in trouble. Standing before his parents with his head bowed, Yuna dutifully answers their questions concerning his and his sister's well-being. As he sees his parents' expressions, he realizes that they are not concerned about the outcome, but why he endangered his and his sister's lives by running forward. Recognizing his failure to consider their feelings due his actions, Yuna offers a sincere apology. Embracing his parents, tears fall from his eyes as he now comprehends the depths of their worry at the thought of losing their children. Hugging his mother, he makes a heartfelt promise to lead a normal life as a child from here onwards. The following day, his parents request him to remain in the room while they finalize Yuna's discharge procedures. Noticing their stern tone, Yuna realizes that their faith in him has reached an all-time low. While awaiting his parents' return, he begins nibbling on the sweets on the table, finally acknowledging how weak he is. Just then, a pack of chocolates is extended to him from the side. Comfortably taking the offered pack, Yuna's smile fades as he sees Kang Hyuncheol sitting beside him. Observing the unmoving boy, Kang unpacks the chocolate biscuit and places it into Yuna's mouth. Studying Kang's actions, Yuna wonders whether he is nearing death, quickly dismissing the thought upon observing Kang's healthy appearance. Understanding the fact that Kang has always appeared a bit crazy, Yuna proceeds with his thoughts. Kang then inquires about the ages of Yuna and his sister. Subsequently, he asks whether Yuna desires to join the academy in the future, mentioning that he would provide a recommendation. Quickly understanding Kang's motives, Yuna comprehends that Kang desires to place him within the academy to facilitate his growth. This, in turn, would present Kang with a stronger opponent to fight with. Trembling slightly, Yuna thinks about the idea that Kang is raising individuals for battle since he no longer has any comparable opponents. Standing up, Kang places a hand on Yuna's shoulder, assuring him that he has enough time to think over his decision. As Kang leaves, he mentions that he will remember Yuna's name. Outside in the hallway, Park Hyrim appears confused and questions if Kang intends to leave just like that. She remarks that miracles have yet to occur in Korea. Nonchalantly sticking a finger in his ear, Kang says that he doesn't care about miracles, emphasizing that strength is his sole concern. Glancing back, he orders her to mind her manners when talking to her elders. Furthermore, he says that if the public were to discover the girl's abilities, she would be disturbed by the media, eliminating any chance of her leading a normal life again. Saying so, he advises her to give up thinking of this miracle. With that, he invites her to visit a dessert cafe, saying how he had to exert a little strength in the recent fight. The day after the Kraken's appearance, Yuna and his family arrive at Grandma's house. As she stands outside, eagerly awaiting their arrival, she expresses how much she missed them all. Through the car window, Grandma catches sight of his sister and him sleeping soundly together in the backseat. Stirring awake in the night, Yuna realizes he's lying on a futon, under his sister sprawled across him, weighing him down. Contemplating her weird sleeping habits, he slowly rises and gently moves her aside. Glancing over, he notices his mother lying atop his father, recognizing that Yuna must have inherited her mother's sleeping habits. Tucking his sister under the warm blanket, Yuna quietly exits the room. Seated outside on the terrace beneath the night sky, Yuna contemplates the mana surrounding his hand. He realizes that his mana has increased compared to before, wondering if it is a result of his unique gift. In his previous life, his gift was called Berserk, due to which consuming more mana strengthened his physical and magical capabilities. Yet, this came at the cost of losing rationality, throwing him into a frenzied state. However, he reflects on how he remained level-headed during the encounter with the Kraken on the bridge. He can't help but imagine the tremendous potential of his gift if it were without the penalty of losing rationality. Clenching his fist, he wonders if he truly understands the truth of his gift, Berserk. Suddenly, he hears his grandma's voice, asking why he is still awake. Surprised, he realizes he hadn't even sensed her presence. Awkwardly, he mentions that he likely slept too much during the car ride. Covering him with a blanket, she says that he needs lots of rest to grow into an adult. Memories from his past life resurface, reminding him of how his grandma always cared for him, even during his dark moments. Glancing at her, comfortably sitting beside him, he knows she is waiting for his words, whether any problems he is facing or just small talk. Finally, he opens his mouth and asks why she isn't sleeping. She simply replies that she isn't sleeping because he is awake, causing him to pout with a blush on his face. He suddenly realizes that, without actively realizing, he has reverted to behaving like a child in his grandma's presence. Just then, his mother appears behind him, carrying a tray with 3 cups of hot milk. Seated together, sipping their milk, Yuna overhears his mother expressing her worry upon hearing that grandma had collapsed. Grandma dismisses it with a smile, speaking that her neighbor is overdramatic. She shares that she was distracted and slipped, seeing what she believed to be her late husband's spirit. Emphasizing that she isn't senile yet, Grandma recounts her experience, feeling as though Grandpa was warning her to stay away. Locking eyes with Yuna, Grandma suggests that perhaps Grandpa was asking Yuna's family to stay away. As Yuna's mother covers her mouth in shock, he thinks that dismissing the encounter as a mere dream would be odd since, had his family perished, they would have joined Grandpa in the afterlife. Considering this, Yuna is surprised why Grandma hadn't mentioned this before. Grandma then reveals of having another dream just moments ago. This time Grandpa had said there is a deer outside. However, upon arriving on the terrace, she discovered Yuna sitting there. Playfully, she pats his head, causing a blush of embarrassment. Laughing, his mother asks Yuna about what he wishes to be when he grows up. Hearing this question, he thinks back to his previous life, the hundreds of monsters he killed and the people begging him to save them. Seeing the tense expression on his face, his mother shakes his shoulders asking what's wrong. Yuna only replies that he doesn't know. Grandma mentions that it's okay if he hasn't decided what he wants to be when he grows up. He still has time to study, play with his friends and experience new things. She mentions that he will eventually find something he wants to do. Even if he doesn't figure out anything, he can just keep on living life till he does. Hearing this, Yuna realizes that Grandma is just advising him to live life to the fullest. Then both his mom and grandma hug him between them, mentioning that he will surely succeed at whatever he chooses. After all, his name Yuna means universe, which holds endless potential. As his sister joins them outside, Yuna suddenly remembers something and pulls out the paper carnation he made for grandma, offering it to her. Watching her chat with his sister, he realizes that she doesn't have his past memories. Still, he can make a lot of happy memories with grandma in his new life. Thinking of this, he offers a thank you in his heart to grandma who raised him in his past life. A few days later, Yuna's parents make an announcement that he and his sister will be welcoming a new sibling. While his sister expresses excitement, Yuna hangs his head. Sensing something amiss, his mother asks if everything is all right. With tear-filled eyes, he raises his head and thanks his mother not once but twice, stating that this is the best thing that has ever happened to him. Laughter fills the room as his father jokingly remarks that based on Yuna's reaction, one might think he is the father. The next day at Duan Kindergarten, Yuna finds himself reluctantly participating in a role play as a puppy forced by the girls. Observing his sad expression, they pat his head, asking him not to cry. Embarrassed and unsure of what to make of the situation, Yuna feels at a loss. Suddenly, Kim Minji approaches, questioning why the others find the dog cute, referring to the role Yuna is playing. She suggests they throw it away or put it out of its misery. Noticing his anger, Minji threatens to report him to the teacher. Yuna recalls how it was teacher Teo who threw him to the girls when he was caught sleeping during school. As the girls become distracted in their role play, Yuna seizes his chance to escape. Moving through the different rooms, he stumbles upon Haeyang engrossed in a book. Unintentionally, he blurts out the ending of the Sherlock Holmes books she's been obsessed with, causing her to cry and accuse him of being mean. Proceeding to another room, Yuna finds Yoonhyuk engaged in a mock sword duel with a toy weapon. Noticing Yoonha's entrance, Yoonhyuk challenges him to a fight, igniting excitement among the other students who comment about who they believe is the strongest. Puzzled by their behavior and reluctantly picking up a toy sword, Yoonha wonders what these kids have been watching on television. Just then, Yoonhyuk's lackeys encourage him to defeat Yoonha, citing his popularity with the girls, causing Yoonha to react with a deadpan expression. Even Kim Minji, Yoonha's neighbor, gestures slicing her finger across her neck, telling Yoonha to die. Glancing at Haeyang, hoping for support, Yoonha is surprised to see her in tears, shouting that she hates him. A single tear falls from Yoonha's eye as he grips his sword, realizing that these brats need to be taught a lesson. Just as Yoonhyuk charges at him, swinging his sword, Yoonha skillfully parries the attack, causing Yoonhyuk's sword to fly out of his hand. Swiftly, Yoonha moves forward, slashing Yoonhyuk across the stomach. Moments later, Yoonhyuk falls to the ground, his sword clattering in the distance. Glancing back at his defeated opponent, Yoonha declares it was a good fight. The students erupt in excited screams, thrilled by the mock duel that has just unfolded. The students push Yoonha forward, proclaiming that he alone is worthy of pulling out the Excalibur. Moments later, Yoonha stands in confusion before a toy sword, wrapped in chains and stuck in a pile of blocks. With ease, he pulls out the Excalibur, eliciting cheers from his friends. Next, the scene shifts to a blood-covered phone lying on the ground, broadcasting a news report of 2 goblins escaping from the front lines and infiltrating the residential area. In the Duwon kindergarten, students are having fun and running around in the play area. Observing their endless energy, Yoonha wonders if these kids ever tire. His thoughts turn back to the Kraken incident, and he realizes that his mana capacity has certainly increased since then. He enters a meditative state, attempting to gather mana when the children approach him, urging him to join in the play. They declare him as the one who will chase others. Just then, Teacher Teo makes an appearance, announcing that he brought ice cream. As usual, Kim Minji and Yoonha argue over a particular ice cream, each clinging tightly to it. Observing their argument, Teacher Teo seizes the ice cream stick, snapping it in half, and offers a piece to both children. Looking at the halves, they decide to settle the matter with a game of rock, paper, scissors to determine who gets the whole piece. Upon hearing this, Teacher Teo becomes angry, insisting they share it in a stern voice. Subdued by the teacher's anger, the 2 children are now satisfied with their half sticks. On the sidelines, Haeyang mentions that Yoonhyuk is absent. Kim Minji mentions that he is probably doing sword practice somewhere. Acknowledging this, Yoonha inwardly agrees, realizing that special training should be conducted secretly. Shortly after, Kim Minji convinces Yoonha back into the play, reminding him of the promise she made to his sister. Reluctantly, Yoonha agrees and finds himself chosen as the one who will catch the others. Suddenly, Yoonha stops running, leaving Kim Minji confused. Ignoring her confusion, Yoonha wonders why he senses a killing intent, especially within a kindergarten. Suddenly, a rank 7 goblin appears near the children, holding a battle axe, looking at them with its menacing red eyes. Just as the goblin raises its axe, ready to strike the terrified young girl, Yoonha swiftly shoots a bolt of mana from his fingertips, the weapon flying from the goblin's hand. Suddenly, another goblin charges at Yoonha from behind. He easily dodges the axe swing and decides to swiftly kill this goblin to go help with the other one. However, just as his attack is about to meet the goblin's skin, Teacher Teo swings a broom with great force, hurling the goblins into the distance. Both Yoonha and the goblin appear astonished by the strength displayed in Teacher Teo's unexpected attack. Throwing the broom at the goblin's face, Teacher Teo scoops up Yoonha and the girl, swiftly carrying them away. Just as the goblins are about to launch an attack from behind, Yoonha once again unleashes a bolt of mana. The leading goblin collides with its companion, both creatures crashing on the ground. Moments later, all 3 of them reach a secure room where the other children and teachers have hid themselves. Placing the girl gently on the floor, Teacher Teo takes deep breaths, exhausted from carrying the children, while running at such a fast pace. The teachers decide to wait in this room with the kids until the arrival of the players. As Yoonha begins to search for everyone, Kim Minji shouts that Yoonhyuk and Haeyang are missing. The children scream that they last saw them in the garden. Just as the teachers debate whether to go get them, Yoonha quickly exits the room. In another part of the school, Haeyang watches in terror as a goblin brings its face dangerously close to Yoonhyuk. while holding his collar in its hands. As the goblin prepares to swing its axe toward Yoonhyuk's head, Haeng rushes to the goblin's side, using her mana to push it away. As the creature gets up, Yoonhyuk grabs Haeng's hand, and they begin to run. Taking a stand in front of Haeng, Yoonhyuk raises his toy sword, declaring that he will hold back the goblin until the adults arrive. While thinking that he only needs to execute what he has practiced in his training, Yoonhyuk swings his sword, but it is effortlessly launched away by the goblin's attack. Closing his eyes in fear, Yoonhyuk waits for the blow, only to find, upon reopening his eyes, Yoona standing between him and the goblin, clutching Yoonhyuk's abandoned sword. Fending off the goblin's attack and driving it back, Yoona swiftly turns around and addresses Yoonhyuk, declaring him a true man. Initially confused, Yoonhyuk starts to tremble in fear, watching the goblin rising to its feet. Without hesitation, Yoona turns around, infusing mana into his sword, and with a powerful slash, he severs the goblin's limbs before cleaving it in half, resulting in a blue crystal falling out on the ground, confirming Yoonhyuk's safety. Yoona is caught off guard as Yoonhyuk rushes into his embrace, weeping and calling him as a genuine hero. Observing this scene, Haeng also clutches onto his shirt, tears streaming down her face, showing how frightened she was. A few minutes earlier, upon hearing Kim Minji mention their absence, Yoona quietly slipped out of the room. Shutting the door behind him, he channels mana into his eyes, granting him the ability to sense the entire school. From here he watches as Haeng and Yoonhyuk evade the goblin's attacks. Witnessing this, Yoona decides to eliminate the goblin that had approached the area where the teachers and children were hidden. Catching the goblin's attention with a loud shout, Yoona stands tall, his hands clutching a box cutter, surrounded by blue mana. As the goblin swings its axe, Yoona quickly squats down, evading the attack. Leaping over the goblin, he strikes first at its neck, then slashes his blade across its back, delivering a fatal blow. Lifeless, the goblin disappears into a cloud of smoke and ash, leaving behind a glowing blue gem on the ground. Discarding his now blunted box cutter, Yoona realizes it is no longer of use. Following that, he dashes towards the other two, rescuing them from harm's way. Later, Teacher Teo discovers Yoona lying on the ground, with both Yoonhyuk and Haeng weeping on his chest. Afterwards, the players assigned to handle such incidents arrive at the school. Yoona manages to evade their questions by explaining that the goblins turned on each other, allowing him to easily kill the remaining wounded creature. Unable to believe that a child could defeat two rank 7 creatures, the player collecting statements reluctantly accepts Yoona's explanation with a sigh. Subsequently, a conference is called by the Mana Management Bureau, formally apologizing for the ordeal endured by Duan School. As the central figure of the incident, Yoona is presented with a certificate honoring his bravery as a child. Amidst the crowd's cheers, including Yoonhyuk, Haeng, and Teacher Teo, Yoona stands on the stage with a forced smile, wondering whether he will need to apologize to his parents once again. The Duan Festival is currently underway at the school. Yoona's class is performing the play Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Haeng takes on the role of Snow White, receiving a shower of flowers from the children dressed as the dwarfs. Backstage, Yoonhyuk is in a state of panic, addressing Yoona as captain and asking him to remind him his lines. With a hint of frustration, Yoona assures him that he should have no problem since he only has one line. Yoona remembers how much Yoonhyuk changed after the goblin incident, now referring to him as warrior. Fortunately, Yoona was able to convince him to compromise, and he now simply calls him captain. Making his way towards the stage, Yoonhyuk gives a thumbs up, determined to show the captain what a talented actor he can be. On the stage, Kim Minjin appears, dressed in a black cloak, offering Snow White a red apple with a dangerous smirk on her face. Unfortunately, when Yoonhyuk's moment arrives, he delivers his line robotically, resulting in laughter from the audience. To make matters worse, Kim Minjin accidentally throws the apple at Yoonhyuk's face, knocking him out. Chaos erupts among the students, and Teacher Teo is forced to intervene and try to restore order. Amidst the chaos, Teacher Teo turns to Yoona, grabbing his shoulder and pleading for him to save the class's performance. He mentions the teachers bet on which class will have the best performance at the festival. Moments later, it's Yoona's turn to perform. He approaches the poisoned Snow White lying on the ground, surrounded by white lilies. As Yoona steps onto the stage, he hears the voices of parents claiming he looks scary, with some questioning if he had killed the monster. Hearing this triggers memories from his previous life, where everyone accused him of being the player who cared little for others' lives and sacrifices. The undead who was solely focused on killing monsters. The player who became a monster himself. Just then, he hears his sister's voice cheering for him in the crowd. Soon after, he recognizes his parents' voices as well, holding his newborn sibling. Witnessing this, Yuna smiles, emerging from the depths of dark memories from his previous life. Taking a deep breath, he flawlessly delivers his lines, with the crowd erupting in cheers. All his classmates join him on stage, laughing and lifting Yuna high in the air, grateful for saving their play. His parents also come on stage. His father lifts him onto his shoulders, laughing with joy. Yuna hears his mother ask if he has discovered what he wants to do. It's the same question she had asked him before, whereas he previously had no answer. This time, he looks at everyone's smiling faces, realizing his desire to protect their happiness. Facing his mom, he softly replies with a smile, suggesting that perhaps he might become a warrior. His family smiles at him as he runs off to celebrate with his friends. While listening to the orientation at Bus Elementary School, 8-year-old Yuna yawns. Noticing that, Kim Minji, standing just behind him, tells him to stop doing embarrassing things while the principal is delivering his speech. In response, Yuna playfully teases her back. As the two start quarreling again, Haeng asks them both to be quiet. Just then, Yoonhyuk asks if there will be many strong kids here and when Yuna will become the strongest among them. Misinterpreting his response, Yoonhyuk shakes with joy, while Yuna looks on annoyed. As the orientation comes to an end, Yuna feels already tired of it. During class, Kim Minji takes a lot of time introducing herself, prompting their homeroom teacher, Teacher Eugenia, to ask her to save the rest for later. Yuna merely offers a short introduction. Next, Haeng trembles during her introduction, her voice barely leaving her mouth, confusing Yuna. A scene from the past unfolds when Yuna and his friends visit Haeng's home. Her father greets them at the door, asking if they would like to eat anything. As his friends request various drinks, Yuna senses his face is familiar. All the kids are fascinated by the variety of beautiful dishes Haeng's father has cooked. Yuna watches them in confusion, wondering what has his friends so excited. Taking a sip of his drink, he is shocked to realize that his mana is being restored because of it. He realizes that this is not just a drink but a potion. Players who subjugate monsters always carry potions with them. Potions can be the difference between life and death as they help restore mana. With a smile, he asks Haeng for her father's name. She replies that his surname is Jeong, and his first name is Sekun. Hearing this, Yuna inwardly exclaims in surprise. In the next instant, he jumps up to Haeng, offering to be close friends, his eyes filled with stars. While Haeng looks on confused at his outburst, Yuna recalls his previous life, remembering who her father is. Jeong Sekun is the person who will revolutionize the potions industry. With skills in carefully selecting ingredients and mana extraction, he also possesses the skill of filtering. In the future, he will become the ultimate king of the potions industry and the head of the Alice Group, one of the top 3 companies in South Korea. Yuna recalls hearing that he didn't have a daughter. Then he realizes that he himself changed his daughter's future by saving Haeng during the goblin attack back in kindergarten. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he points at himself, mentioning that if someone messes with her at school, he will take care of it. Hearing that, she looks down at her drink, saying okay with a smile. Returning to the present, Yuna watches as Haeng shakily introduces herself but gains confidence toward the end. Next, the teacher calls Jin Sena for her introduction. A girl hesitantly stands up beside Yuna. He looks at the girl in surprise, especially at the wolf-like ears on her head, her shaggy blonde hair, and the tail at her back. Murmurs fill the room as everyone calls her a monster or a demi-human. Demi-humans are individuals born with their genes altered due to the poor distribution of mana. Due to their resemblance to monsters, they are subject to hatred from people who lost loved ones to monsters. Tears well up in Jin Sena's eyes as she introduces herself, mentioning she didn't go to kindergarten. Again, the students quietly talk to each other, saying how their parents told them not to touch her. Hearing all his, Yuna understands there exists prejudice against the demi-humans. Just before the teacher can call for the next student, Choi Yoonhyuk excitedly stands up. Shouting, he announces how he likes swordsmanship and is learning mana training from his boss. Pointing towards Yuna, he declares that his boss is the strongest so no one should get any ideas. All the while Yuna has his head down with embarrassment. After that, thereafter asks Yuna to stay after class, and that his parents have been called as well. Sitting there alone, he wonders how he didn't even do anything to warrant this treatment. Listening to Yoonhyuk shouting around the school that Os is the best, Yuna decides that he will have to increase the difficulty of his training. In the cafeteria, Yuna lets out a sigh. The mana quantity test for the first years is finally over. He reflects on his friend's results. Kim Minji's mana is below average, while Yoonhyuk and Sena have above average results, along with him. As for Haeng, her mana cannot be estimated. However, there was an error in the recording, and the staff mislabeled it as average. Balancing his food tray, Yuna walks toward his friend's table. Later, Yoonhyuk gets up to get more food for the third time, and Yoona remarks that the lunch lady probably recognizes him by now. Observing this, Kim Minji decides to go for a second serving as well. Yoona, never one to miss an opportunity, playfully calls her a glutton and teases her. Just then, they stop their quarrel and turn their attention to the cafeteria door as murmurs around them intensify. Standing there is Jin Seona, standing with her head down as everyone around begins to gossip about her. She makes her way toward the first available empty seat. Unfortunately, it's at the table of the pretentious and arrogant girls, led by Jin Sena. Instead of allowing her to sit, they start insulting her appearance and clothes, suggesting that she probably picked them up somewhere. Hearing all this, Seona starts trembling and murmuring apologies. Rising from his seat, Yoona recalls a conversation from his previous life. When he was attempting the Abyss dungeon, one of his teammates, Jin Perung, a demi-human, perished against a monster. Jin Perung's final wish was for Yoona not to ignore the demi-humans, even if there are some bad individuals among them. Recalling his old friend's words, Yoona stands up from the table, asking Kim Minji to make some space. Nonchalantly, Kim Minji remarks that she knew he would do that, letting out a tired sigh. Yoonhyuk cheers on his captain, and Haeng looks at Yoona's back with a happy expression. Meanwhile, Seona stands there with her head lowered, enduring the insults thrown at her. In the next moment, Yoona grabs her tray and guides her away to his friend's table, mentioning that there's an available space for her. Observing Yoona and his friend smiling warmly at her, Sena mutters that things might become difficult for them if they help her. To this, Yoona simply replies that he doesn't care. Behind them, the pretentious girls whisper among themselves, wondering which kindergarten Yoona and his friends are from. The group's leader, Jin Sena, plays with her hair dismissively, stating that there's no need to gather information about them. After all, based on their actions, she can tell that they belong to a lower status. As Seona takes a seat at their table, Kim Minji cracks a joke to lighten the mood. She mentions how Yoona can be a bit stubborn, so Seona shouldn't mind him. In response, Yoona playfully calls her stick Minji as always. While his mouth is full, Yoonhyuk waves a hello at Seona and mentions how today's lunch is exceptionally good. Next, Haeng passes Seona some barley tea and offers to be friends. Feeling the inviting atmosphere for the first time, Seona begins to cry while eating her lunch. Minji and Yoonhyuk are shocked, unsure of what to do, but Haeng kindly hands her a handkerchief to dry her tears. A few days later, we see Yoonha, his sister, and their friends playing hide and seek near their home. Yoonha is it, while the others can either enhance their bodies with mana or suppress their mana signatures to avoid being found by him. Seona raises her hand, mentioning that she doesn't know how to control mana, to which Yoona replies that she knows how to hide her presence and is physically fit. Yoona thinks that he will teach her telepathy later. The only rule is that the others can't go inside buildings. Yoona counts to 100 while the others find places to hide. As soon as he finishes counting, he quickly finds them all. Now only Seona and Haeng remain. As soon as he discovers Seona's location, she starts running and jumping away, confidently stating that she won't lose as long as Yoona can't catch her. Hearing this, the others also realize that Yoona hasn't touched them yet. Strengthening their bodies with mana, they run away as well. Observing this, Yoona grabs his head in frustration and decides to use mana as well. Meanwhile, Haeng accidentally enters a library filled with books, captivated by their numbers. She completely forgets about the game of hide and seek. After catching everyone else, Yoona and his friends enter the building, only to find Haeng engrossed in reading Alice in Wonderland with a grandpa who is likely the library's owner. Seeing this, Yoona apologizes for the interruption and then playfully flicks Haeng's forehead, saying that she should have mentioned it if she didn't want to play anymore. Before she can start crying, Yoona stops scolding her and grabs her hand to head back home. Hearing this, the grandpa kindly offers to take them home if they wish. Outside, Yoona's mouth hangs open as he watches Yoonhyuk, Haeng, and Seona enter a luxurious limousine. Looking at the extravagant car, he can only wonder who this grandpa truly is. As he watches the car drive away, Yoona feels a twinge of jealousy, a tear forming in his eye, as he reflects on how he has never ridden in such an expensive car before. Sitting in class, Yoona observes the rain pouring outside their school. Just then, he is interrupted from his thoughts as he hears the teacher mention that she is considering adding Yoona as a candidate for the class president election. Curious, he asks the teacher why she is including him in the election. Kim Minji then speaks up, mentioning that someone wanted Yoona to be a candidate. She points to Yoonhyuk, who is gazing at Yoona with excitement in his eyes, making Yoona's vein pop in frustration. Meanwhile, Kim Minji smirks mischievously from beside him. Suddenly, Yoona proclaims that he will drop out. The teacher advises him not to ignore Yoonhyuk's sincerity. Just then, Jin Sena, the leader of the arrogant girls, raises her hand and declares that she will nominate herself. She smirks in Yunha's direction. Before the elections, Sena has her father pay for burgers for everyone in the class. Recognizing the gesture for what it is, Yuna and his friends refuse to accept the burgers, while the rest of the class eagerly eat them. Sena's lackeys distribute the hamburgers and inform everyone that if Sena becomes class president, she will buy burgers for the class every month. Yuna sighs in disbelief seeing a child behaving this way. Days later, Duan Elementary School embarks on their spring field trip. The teacher takes attendance for the class, noticing that the students are not paying attention and are focused on their own conversations. She seeks the help of the class president and vice president. It turns out that Sena became the president due to the burger incident, while Yuna was chosen as the vice president, much to his annoyance. After the roll call, the class has a wonderful time hiking, visiting shrines, and enjoying a picnic in a garden. Yuna opens his lunch box to find that his sister wrote "I love you" with ketchup. The nearby students praise Yunha, Kim Minji, and Haeng for their beautifully packed lunches. Yoonhyuk mentions that his mother packed cup noodles for him, expressing his enthusiasm for them. Hearing this, his friends share their lunches with him, all the while feeling awkward about how his mom couldn't be bothered to prepare lunch for him. Yuna also decides to reduce the intensity of his hell training. Meanwhile, in a different part of the forest, a player rushes forward, confused by the appearance of monsters in this region. Tripping over a branch, the player is killed by the rank 7 monster, Hound, and the rank 6 monster, Hellhound. Just as the beasts finish off the player, lightning courses through their bodies, shocking them. They hear an order to proceed further down the mountains, heading south in the same direction where Duan Elementary School's field trip is taking place. Yuna and his friends examine the slips of paper in their hands, discovering none of them hold any clues to the treasure. Yuna suggests they should have just given up on the treasure hunt, but Yoonhyuk still expresses his desire to find it. Hearing this, Yuna asks if he himself is a pirate. Frustrated, Yuna crumples the paper slips, and Kim Minji proposes they venture deeper into the forest. Yuna wears an annoyed expression while everyone else wholeheartedly agrees. Reluctantly accompanying his friends, Yuna wonders why they had to come to Bukhun Mountain when it is so far away. They could have easily gone to Gyeongbok Palace, which is much closer. After all, this isn't a picnic, but feels like a hike instead. He further thinks that Uijeongbu district is just beyond this mountain, recalling a tragic incident from his previous life that occurred there. Just then, the group is startled by a scream from behind. Yuna instructs everyone to be quiet as he listens for the source. They stare in shock as a rank 7 hound leaps out of the trees. Witnessing the ferocious, wolf-like creature approaching them, Yuna realizes that today is the day of the Bukhun Mountain flower viewing incident. While Lim Ga-yul's protective barrier shields the rest of Seoul, the monster from Uijeongbu district has somehow managed to breach the barrier and move towards the south. Naturally, this tragic incident resulted in numerous casualties. As the monster advances towards the fallen Kim Minji, Yuna forcefully kicks the hound's side. Taking out a fork imbued with blue mana, Yuna repeatedly stabs the creature while it whines in pain, blood splattering all around him. The others watch his actions in shock until finally, the monster dies and dissipates into wisps of golden light. Standing in the same spot, Yuna asks if his friends are alright. They respond positively but in low voices. Then, Yubhyuk asks if Yuna himself is alright, noting that he seemed like someone else while killing the monster. Yuna realizes his friend is correct. While stabbing the monster, he acted like his former self, the undead. Yuna simply brushes it off, saying that he was feeling a little agitated. Looking at the bloodstains on his weapon, he realizes that he revealed a side of himself that he shouldn't have, a side that becomes frenzied when killing monsters. Suddenly, they hear multiple screams echoing through the forest. Understanding that there are multiple creatures, Yuna's friends suggest fleeing. Hearing their suggestion, Yuna thinks about how hounds always move in packs. Since the creatures are descending from the mountaintop, he realizes he may not be able to save everyone in his group. With a cold determination on his face, he gathers his friends and urges them to listen closely to what he is about to say. Outside the forest, near the picnic area, numerous students continue to walk, not knowing the danger approaching them. Amongst the groups is Jin Sena's. She sits alone, instructing her lackeys to search for the treasure themselves. Returning her attention to her phone, she suddenly hears her group screaming and rushing toward her. Startled by their terrified faces, she demands to know what's happening. Just then, she sees multiple hounds emerging from the forest, chasing after her lackeys. As one of the monsters leaps toward her, its jaws gaping wide, Jin Sena closes her eyes in fear, desperately calling out for someone to save her. Miraculously, something crashes into the monster's shoulder, causing it to crash on the ground. Looking around, Jin Sena notices Yunha wielding a gun and a sword. The smoke rising from the gun indicates that he had just shot the monster. As she looks at him, he states that she should go down the mountain. Turning to leave, she grabs his shirt, insisting that he needs to protect her. He glances back, his voice devoid of emotion, and tells her to get lost. Moments ago, we see Yunha advising his group to go down the mountain together and ask anyone they meet to call the players. Realizing that Yunha won't be joining them, Yoonhyuk starts suggesting that he can assist him. However, Yunha cuts him off with a stern look, telling him to stop joking and focus on survival. He explains that the hound is a monster with a powerful core, telling his friends to suppress their mana as much as possible, just as they did when hiding their presence during hide and seek. With that, Yunha rushes forward alone, searching for students he can rescue. He scatters the food materials from Haeyang's lunchbox around him. The mana imbued in the food, prepared by her father, can be used to lure the hounds, who have a keen sense of smell for mana. By throwing around these food items, he intends to confuse their sense of smell. Additionally, he releases his mana in a barrier around him, allowing him to locate the creatures. As Yunha leaps up the trees, he gazes toward the distant mountain, observing a trail of black smoke descending from its peak, wondering just how many monsters are present. He thinks about the fact that he now possesses half the mana he had before regressing. Glancing at the yuzu tea in his bag's pocket, he realizes the importance of conserving mana. Just then, the painful screams of a dying human reach his ears from a distance. Arriving at the spot, he notices a massive pack of hounds. Leaping into the clearing, he quickly kills the nearest hound. Watching the lifeless player, he takes out his sword. Upon examining the blade, he recognizes it as being made of mana-infused metal, allowing him to kill the hounds without depleting his own mana. Pointing the sword forward, he provokes the hound pack, taunting them to attack him. Infusing mana into his body, Yunha moves with incredible speed, appearing as a fleeting blue blur as he slashes through the monster's left and right. Jumping up, he swiftly slides his hand across the blade's length, then swings it across, creating a multitude of mana-formed needles that rain down upon the remaining hounds, piercing through their bodies. After eliminating every hound in the clearing, he quickly changes direction and races forward. Along his path, he encounters Jin Sena and instructs her to descend the mountain. Watching his back as he runs ahead, only one thought occupies Jin Sena's mind, that she must have him. Finally, Yunha arrives face to face with the rank 6 creature, the Hellhound. The Hellhound roars ferociously, enveloping Yunha in a cloud of black smoke. Understanding the situation, Yunha smirks inwardly, knowing that no matter how much the Hellhound marks him for the hounds to attack, that Hellhound will not leave this place alive. Jumping into the air, Yunha wields his sword, causing arcs of lightning to fall onto the hounds, swiftly killing them. Returning back to the ground, he notices that the Hellhound had evaded his strikes. In response, the Hellhound lets out a loud roar, summoning another pack of hounds to attack him from behind. Yunha easily dodges their assaults, simultaneously slashing some and shooting others. Pausing for a moment, multiple lifeless hounds vanish into thin air around him, while a new group stands before him. Above them, on a cliff, stands the Hellhound. Wiping the blood from his face, Yunha remarks in an emotionless tone how annoying the situation has become. The scene shifts as Yunha and his friends continue to go down the mountain, carefully suppressing their mana. Coming to a halt, Yoonhyuk asks Haeyang where they should head next. Taking deep breaths, sweat streaming down her face, Haeyang realizes that she must fulfill her role. Before parting ways, Yuna had assigned specific roles to each member. Haeyang and Siona are the navigators, with Haeyang as the primary navigator due to her exceptional mana capacity and control, infusing mana into her eyes, causing them to emit a blue glow. Haeyang sees something weird on the left. With her heightened sense of hearing, Siona confirms that the sounds coming from the left are dangerous. As all her senses are above average, Jin Siona serves as the secondary navigator. Running alongside them, Yoonhyuk wonders about the absence of players. Just as he thinks about turning back due to a sound he heard, Kim Minji grasps his hand, urging him to continue moving forward. Her role within the team is to prevent rash decisions by others. Suddenly, the group stops, observing a dense, dark smoke ahead. Emerging from the misty smoke, a larger-than-average hound known as Hound N, with crystals on its back, makes its appearance. Roaring, it summons a pack of hounds that surround the group. Assessing the situation, Choi Yoon-hyuk remembers his role. As the strongest member, he is the primary damage dealer. His task is to attack any monsters. Taking a deep breath, he infuses blue mana into the twig in his hands. Recalling his training with Yoonha, he wonders if he can execute it successfully. Swinging the twig, he manages to wound the leading hound. In the next instant, two of the creatures leap toward him, with one inflicting a deep gash between his shoulders. Another hound slashes across his side, causing him to lose hold of his twig. Gazing at the bloodied Yoon-hyuk, Seona realizes that the monsters are toying with him. Determined not to give up, Yoon-hyuk channels mana into his fist, delivering a powerful punch to the hound jumping at him, utilizing its own momentum against it. Staring at his mana-covered fist in surprise, Yoon-hyuk is left wondering what he just did. He feels a similar sensation to what Boss did before. Just as he thinks this, a hound lunges towards him, colliding with his chest and sending him hurtling through the air. Worried cries from his friends fill the air as Yoon-hyuk crashes into a boulder. The hound approaches him, placing its paw on his chest, exerting pressure and opens its jaws wide. As the hound bites down on his arm, his friends rush toward the pack of hounds, their hands enveloped in mana. Meanwhile, Seona becomes overwhelmed with emotions, desperately wishing for someone to come to their aid. In the blink of an eye, a radiant golden glow spreads from her through the forest. Moments later, the group finds themselves shielded by a protective barrier of blue mana, while wind tornadoes materialize outside, tearing the hounds apart. Looking up, they see the Zodiac from the 12 Thrones, Shin Seoyoung, also known as the Phantom Wind. Holding a paper fan in her hands, she assures them of their safety and takes deals with the monsters. On the other side of the mountain, Yuna consumes all the rice wine prepared by Haeyang's father. With his mana now replenished, he moves toward the Hellhound and the few remaining hounds. Coating his sword with mana, he declares that they are all destined to die. In an instant, he appears right in front of a hound, leaving behind a blue streak. Quickly slashing through the front creatures, he shoots a hound that is mere inches away from his head, causing its head to burst apart. Flickering through the pack like lightning, he emerges on the other side, leaving a trail of lifeless hounds behind him, their heads and limbs separated. Pointing his sword at the Hellhound, he taunts that it is next. Using the skill Sky Step, he rushes towards the rank 6 monster. Midway, he feels pain coursing through his body, a reminder that he has pushed himself too far. Ignoring the discomfort, he slashes at the Hellhound. The creature seizes the sword in its jaws, prompting Yuna to shoot at the monster. However, a black mist materializes, blocking the bullets. Cursing under his breath, he watches as the monster begins conjuring a fireball within its mouth, aimed at Yuna. In the last moment, he manages to free his sword from the beast's jaws and swiftly evades the attack, dropping to a low position. Dodging the oncoming assault, he empties his remaining bullets into the Hellhound's back. Yuna skids across the ground, stabbing his sword into the earth to halt his momentum. Now the only option left is to engage the creature in close combat. As his bullets have run out, he realizes that, like him, the Hellhound is also exhausted. Suddenly, his eyes widen as the monster prepares another devastating attack. Night orbs of dark mist materialize around the Hellhound, who deems Yuna an arrogant human. Gritting his teeth, Yuna understands that the Hellhound still possesses sufficient mana for a huge attack. Yuna notices intricate markings on the black orbs, confused about the nature of the impending attack. The Hellhound roars, promising to eliminate the human, and charges toward Yuna. Assessing the incoming assault, Yuna slashes through the orb-like projectiles. Just as he disperses the black mist, he finds himself face to face with the Hellhound, its mouth aglow with a fireball. Seizing the moment, Yuna forcefully brings his sword forward, using it to block the attack. By channeling his remaining mana into his sword and body, he manages to divert the incoming attack to the sides. However, as his mana levels are depleted, he is forced to stop the strengthening effect on his body. In the next instant, he is thrown through the air by the massive force of the Hellhound's attack, crashing repeatedly into the ground. Rising with trembling arms, his body badly burned, Yuna thinks how even after expending the remainder of his mana, he still suffered severe injuries. Stabbing his sword into the ground, he gasps for breath, and his present self merges with his past image. Echoing in his ears are the whispers of players commenting on Yuna's exhaustion, yet veteran players would urge them to observe the undead for a moment, for the Berserker's true strength manifests only in extreme circumstances. Just like in the past, a smirk forms on his face as mana surges in his eyes. Activating his gift, an immense column of violent mana erupts around him, shooting into the sky and destroying the surrounding area. The Hellhound appears frightened, barely managing to hold its ground. In the next moment, Yuna rushes toward the beast, lightning crackling along his path. He appears beside the hellhound and slashes away, his strike so swift that they become invisible. At the last second, the hellhound leaps backward, losing its front limbs in the process. Without missing a beat, Yuna charges forward once more, engaging the beast head-on. Surprisingly, the hellhound remains unscathed as a black cocoon starts forming around it, shielding it from harm. Observing this, Yuna leaps backward, calmly assessing the strength of the dome. He deems it weak. Pulling his sword back, he thrusts it forward, creating a gap in the barrier. Expanding the gap with his hands, he taunts the hellhound, saying that it is already defeated. With the barrier finally dissipated, Yuna swings his mana-infused sword at the prone beast, sending its head landing onto the ground with a thud. As the monster's body vanishes into golden light, Yuna crashes to the ground, taking deep breaths. Gazing at the sunset on the horizon, he murmurs that it is finally over, then falls unconscious. Around him, the remains of defeated monsters and golden light signify the large-scale battle that took place. On the side of his friends, outside the protective barrier, Shin Seoyoung, a member of the 12 Thrones, instructs everyone to close their eyes for a moment. With a cold expression directed at the hounds, she opens her paper fan and manipulates gusts of wind and mana, annoyed that the players stationed here couldn't protect the mountain. Clenching her fist, the tornadoes converge, crushing the monsters caught in between. Within moments, all the hounds lie dead, and the once clear tornadoes now sport a purplish shade. With a swipe of her hand, the tornadoes gradually dissipate. Turning around, she remembers the presence of children witnessing the bloody scene and quickly apologizes, asking them not to cry. Interrupting her, Win-hyuk, supported by Kim Minj, exclaims with excitement, praising her for her cool skills. The others join in, questioning if she belongs to the 12 Thrones as well. Confused by their enthusiasm, Shin Seoyoung stands there, wondering how these 4 kids remain calm despite experiencing such a traumatic event. Observing their torn clothing, she decides to scan them with her mana to check for any internal injuries. Noticing their mana levels, she suddenly moves forward and embraces Haeang with a smile. Holding her tightly, she asks if Haeang wants to become a player or not. However, the moment is interrupted as Yoon-hyuk intervenes, pulling the two apart and claiming that he is the one who will become a player. Hearing this, Shin Seoyoung remembers how all of them used mana to fend off the hounds. In the next second, she surprises both Yoon-hyuk and Kim Minj by hugging them as well. Glancing at Siona, she mentions that she was able to reach them because of Siona's telepathic message. Siona, confused, can't recall doing such a thing but sheds tears of joy, happy that she could contribute and protect her friends. Observing this, Seoyeon hugs her too, while the other 3 watch with deadpan looks. Next, she instructs them to head down the mountain, where rescue forces are already present. She states that she needs to save other people but can't let them go alone. Suddenly, a loud noise comes from the trees, causing Seoyoung to smile. Emerging from the trees is a massive, muscular man with a metal arm, the Azure Ocean Clan's Kang Cheol, another member of the 12 Thrones. He playfully complains about Seoyoung leaving him behind, forcing him to walk all this distance. Pointing at Kang Cheol, she suggests that the kids follow him down the mountain. Yoon-hyuk cuts her off, mentioning that the boss hasn't returned yet, which confuses both of them. Meanwhile, in his unconscious state, Yoon-ho relives memories of his previous life. He recalls a particular night in a tent where Lee Yoo-jung scolded him for recklessly endangering his life. She emphasized that if she's healing someone, that person should at least listen to her and refrain from jeopardizing their own life. In the next moment, Yoon-ho awakens in a hospital room. Glancing at his arm, he mutters that his injuries have been healed. Just as a person is about to enter the room, they hear his words and pause momentarily before entering. In the next second, Yoon-ho widens his eyes as Shin Seoyoung enters and greets him. Deep inside, he sweats, uncertain of how much she knows about him. However, he realizes she can't possibly know that he was the one who fought against the monsters. Breaking out of his thoughts, he asks about his friends. Seoyoung mentions that it has been approximately 6 hours and that his friends are safe. She further explains how Siona and Haeang were particularly worried about him and that his parents are on their way as well. Relieved that his friends are unharmed, Yoon-ho wonders how his parents will react to the news. Seoyoung then says that she has something to investigate, urging him to answer her questions truthfully. Getting straight to the point, she asks why he was there and who killed the monsters. After a moment's hesitation, he smiles, shaking his head, saying that he can't remember. He mentions he was running and that's how he ended up there. Scratching his cheek thoughtfully, he mentions that he saw someone saved him just before he lost consciousness. Shin Seoyoung steps beside him, her voice devoid of emotion, as she suspects Yuna of being the one who defeated all the monsters. She asks for his thoughts on this possibility. Upon hearing that, Yuna's eyes widen slightly before he dismisses the idea with a smile, questioning how an elementary school student could have possibly killed the monsters. However, Seoyoung continues speaking, smiling as she reveals that she found his name linked to the Brave Child Award from last year. Yuna awkwardly looks away, brushing it off as a mere coincidence. Seoyoung presses on, asking if it was also a coincidence that he killed the monsters. She cuts off his denial, mentioning that they have his fingerprints on the weapon. With her victorious look fixed upon him, Yuna realizes he can't keep making up excuses. It's clear to him that she is already convinced of his actions. Shaking off his thoughts, Yuna proposes a deal. Seoyoung, still smiling, questions why she should make a deal with him since she has nothing to lose. Yuna simply responds that he will provide her with important information. Seoyoung thinks about his offer with a serious expression, wondering how Yuna has given up on denying his involvement in killing the hounds. Intrigued by the idea, she asks what he wants in return. Yuna states that he doesn't need anything and simply wishes to live a normal life, surprising Seoyoung. As she steps into her car outside, she recalls their conversation, remembering how Yuna asked her to investigate the successors of the Dangun group, particularly the female heirs. He also asked her to look into their relationship with the clan head of the Azure Ocean clan. Seoyoung's expression darkens, saying that she doesn't like pranks. She questions if Yuna is willing to take responsibility for his claims. In response, Yuna replies that if she finds nothing, he will join her clan. Seoyoung points out that either outcome would be beneficial for him. Yuna counters, stating that this is an opportunity for her to verify her husband's integrity and potentially gain a valuable asset. Sitting in the car, Seoyoung instructs her subordinates to investigate Yuna's claims. She also orders them to look into the monsters appearing in the Gangnam area, recalling how Yuna warned her that a new low-tier monster will appear and not to underestimate. The next day, it is reported that Shin Seoyoung took care of the monsters that appeared on Mount Bakhun, fulfilling Yunha's request for her to take responsibility for eliminating all the monsters. News also surfaces that the clan head of the Azure Ocean clan, Gil Seong, publicly apologized for the incident. The sublord Kim Kyung-won also apologized and resigned. Several days later, Kim Kyung-won tragically took his own life. Months later, the group gathers to celebrate Jin Seona's birthday, exchanging gifts at the elementary school. It is revealed that Kim Minji got the date by annoying their homeroom teacher. Later that night, they hold a birthday party for Seona at Haeing's cafe. As everyone enjoys themselves, Yuna thinks back on how Jin Seona had threatened him to attend the party. He has discovered that she belongs to a collateral family of the powerful KK group. Gazing at his friends' smiling faces, Yuna coldly pierces his fork into the cake, his eyes reflecting an inhumane resolve, promising to tear the KK group apart if they ever harm his family and friends. During the Spirit Festival, Yoonhyuk declares to Yuna that he will show the results of his training and ensure their victory. Curious about Yoonhyuk's confidence, Yuna looks his way. Turning around, he observes his classmates excitedly discussing their homeroom teacher's promise to treat them to chicken and pizza if their class wins. On the other side, their teacher sheds tears, pondering whether her wallet will survive this ordeal. On the racetrack, as the starting gun fires, Yoonhyuk dashes forward with incredible speed, leaving the other contestants behind, clearly utilizing mana. Cheers erupt from the sidelines, but Yuna and Kim Minji watch with annoyed expressions. Just as Yoonhyuk approaches the finish line, imagining how pleased Boss will be if he claims victory, his body begins to slow down, and his vision blurs. Just inches away from the finish line, he collapses from exhaustion due to depleted mana. Observing their homeroom teacher escort Yoonhyuk to the infirmary, Yuna understands the need to address his temper and improve his mentality. Suddenly, his sister jumps him from behind, announcing that she took first place in the 200-meter race and requests a reward. Hearing her words, Yuna openly praises her with a bright smile. As he waves back to his sister, shining stars surround him, and a genuine smile is on his face. However, Kim Minji observes the scene with a disgusted expression. Returning to the group, Seona grumbles about how big sister Yuna is too fast, accusing him of cheering for his sister instead of his own class. Both Kim Minji and Seona claim that he was only watching his sister. Yuna awkwardly attempts to change the subject by asking about Haeing. Meanwhile, Haeing was asked to bring an American but asked their Italian neighbor, Juliet, who just spoke in English. Yuna recalls how Haeing used to be a crybaby and marvels at her ability to now trick the staff. As Yuna fulfills his mother's request by delivering lunch boxes to Seona and Haeing, he notices a woman sitting beside Haeing. Upon questioning Haeng, he learns that the woman is one of her father's regular clients. Yuna finds the woman's face familiar but struggles to remember where he has seen her before. While passing by the tents afterward, he hears Siona inviting him for tea, but he chooses to ignore her and continues moving forward. Noticing Siona pointing him out to her father, CEO of KK Pharmaceuticals, Jin Young-woon, Yuna witnesses Mr. Jai rise and confront him, questioning if he is the boy who bullies his daughter. Witnessing this, Yuna boldly remarks, like father, like daughter, saying that they both possess a sense of superiority because of a mere pharmaceutical company. Enraged, Young-woon attempts to slap Yuna but stops his hand upon witnessing the intense, bloodthirsty look in Yuna's eyes. Surprised by the ferocity displayed by such a young boy, Jin Young-woon is reminded of the KK group's president. Yuna flicks his hand, asking if Young-woon is frightened. Snapping out of his thoughts, Young-woon throws a punch at Yuna. Just as Yuna calmly observes the approaching fist, he is taken aback when his father intervenes, landing a punch on Young-woon's face, causing blood to spatter. Seeing the man fall to the ground, Yuna's father brushes off his hands and questions how dare he mess with his son. Afterward, he adopts a concerned expression, asking Yuna if he is injured. Meanwhile, Yuna worries that his father has become involved in the situation. Hearing Young-woon order his guards to teach the lowly dog a lesson, Yuna thinks how he will exact revenge on Young-woon if anything happens to his father. But in the next moment, his father steps in front of him, declaring that he will handle the situation. Young-woon shouts, questioning if they even know who he is. Yuna's father calmly responds that he does indeed know him. He adjusts his glasses and slicks back his hair, asking in return if Young-woon knows who he's messing with. Young-woon now appears surprised, realizing that he is Section Chief No from Sirius. He looks back at Yuna, understanding why the young boy remained so calm before. However, all he sees is Yuna's own astonished expression at the reveal. In Yuna's mind, he is dumbfounded by his father's position. Sirius Group is South Korea's second largest corporation, primarily specializing in automobile and entertainment devices. On the other hand, Sena's father, realizing the situation, profusely apologizes while sweating. He asks why the section chief of Starter's management planning is here. Hearing this, Yuna is even more surprised, as that team oversees the devices at Sirius Group. Jin Young-woon bows to Yuna, apologizing, and orders the shocked Jin Sena to apologize as well. Sena looks around in shock as the students start talking about how she lost to Yuna. Students are happy to witness this, as she had always been a bully to others. Feeling alone, she reluctantly lowers her head and offers a weak apology before bursting into tears and running away from the scene. As Yuna and his father move away, Jin Young-woon bows once again in their direction, leaving his guards in shock. Yuna feels his father's hand on his shoulder, wondering if he will be scolded for this or not. After walking a distance, his father squats down to Yuna's eye level, and assures him that if anything like this happens again, he should simply inform his dad. Hearing those words, the 34-year-old Yuna feels a new sense of determination to protect his father. In an abandoned building amidst a destroyed city, a suited man hires a player to deal with some individuals who have been causing him trouble. In an instant, the hooded player teleports away with the money, while the man's laughter echoes through the building. A few days later, Yuna visits the Dawn Mall. To his frustration, Julieta places her hand on his shoulder, reminding him that this is just the beginning and he shouldn't be tired so soon. As Yuna watches his sister leave, he glances at Julieta's husband, Bruno, and wonders how an ordinary office employee can conceal his mana so skillfully. Using mana to scan him, the results shock him so much that he needs to come up with an excuse for his silence. He wonders how they will be able to locate the others now that Yuna can conceal her mana as well. Bruno takes out a device tracking Julieta's location, asking him to keep it a secret. Sensing something weird, Yuna looks at a person cloaked in mana. He notices a tattoo on the person's arm and recalls the individual he encountered in his previous life, Naname. Yuna inquires of Bruno if he has noticed anything unusual. In response, Bruno informs him that he has detected 3 individuals with an odd smell about them. Yuna releases orbs of invisible mana towards the 3 individuals, observing as they skillfully block the attacks, confirming their status as players. Just as Yuna begins to trail one of them, he witnesses the person dropping mana stones from their pockets. Realizing that they have been scattering these stones throughout the mall, Yuna understands their motives. Within moments, mana from all corners of the mall converges at a single point, resulting in mana maldistribution. Suddenly, a portal materializes, and hounds and goblins start emerging from it. Yuna overhears the hooded man declaring that everything is proceeding as planned, instructing his comrades to eliminate anyone that stands in their way. shocked, Yuna realizes that this event did not occur in his previous life, indicating that the future has already altered. Bruno swiftly kills a hound that had been stealthily approaching Yuna from behind, then grabs his shoulder, saying that they must find Julieta and Yuna. Watching the tracker, they determine that the girls are on the 5th floor. However, they are stopped by one of the 3 hooded figures who recognizes Yuna as the source of the mana attack from earlier. As the assailant prepares a mana attack, Yuna worries about their adversary's grade, if it is B or C. Before Yuna can respond, Bruno quickly strikes the man's face, rendering him unconscious. Watching this, Yuna realizes that Bruno is certainly no ordinary individual. Just as Bruno goes for the killing blow, he stops him, mentioning that these people are not worth the trouble. Instead, he proceeds to deliver a series of kicks to the fallen man. All Bruno can think is how frightening today's children have become. Meanwhile, on the 5th floor, Julieta and Yuna hear the emergency announcement regarding the appearance of monsters in the mall. Focusing her mana-enhanced vision, Yuna calmly notices the number of beasts surrounding them. She sees 3 on the left, 2 on the right, and 1 in the middle section. With a sense of determination, Yuna opens her eyes and declares her intention to protect Julieta, only to be cut off by Julieta, who pulls her arm away. Unknown to Yuna, a hound was behind her, ready to strike at her head. In a display of skill, Julieta uses a mana-strengthened stick, smashing the hound into the wall. Astonished, Yuna realizes that elder sister, Julieta, is also a player. Julieta confidently suggests that they move towards Bruno and Yuna, mentioning that the 2 are likely waiting for them. Just then, the girls catch sight of a horde of hounds charging towards them, mere feet away. They run with Julieta tightly clutching Yuna's hand. In a flash, Julieta channels mana into her hand and launches an attack behind them. However, only a few strikes manage to connect, as the hounds are too fast. She understands that her mana will deplete rapidly if this continues, while searching for a weapon. Amidst the chaos, Yuna's voice rises above the commotion, pointing towards an escalator nearby. Just then Yuna hears Julieta's warning shout, turning around to see a hound lunging towards her with its jaws open wide. In that moment, Yuna realizes that unlike the previous encounter with the Kraken, she is no longer scared. Infusing her body with mana, she easily sidesteps, narrowly evading the hound's attack. Swiftly, she unleashes a powerful kick, sending the creature downwards from the 5th floors below. Taking a moment to catch her breath, Yuna lands back on the ground. However, she misplaces her foot. Fortunately, Julieta moves to stabilize her, preventing any injury. The severity of their situation becomes evident as they find themselves surrounded by hounds on both sides. Turning towards the nearby escalator, the girls harness their mana to execute a powerful leap, descending towards its mechanical steps. As the hounds leap fervently, closing in on them, Julieta vents her frustration in fluent Italian, seizing hold of a nearby metal stand. She expertly swings the stand, sending 3 hounds soaring over the edge, eliciting admiration for her prowess from Yuna. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Yuna engages in combat with another assailant, employing cosmetics as makeshift projectiles. Diving forward, she executes a swift leg sweep, toppling her opponent. A forceful punch to his face paints it crimson, rendering him unconscious. Observing from above, the girls witness hounds tumbling down from the upper floors, while they themselves remain unscathed. Yuna retrieves a sword from the incapacitated man, determined to locate Non-Aim. With a decisive swipe, she separates Bruno from his weapon, promising to deal with the responsible party in an ice-cold tone. As they reach the 5th floor, Julieta and Yuna encounter a pair of henchmen brandishing their knives, their hostile intent apparent. As Julieta swings the metal stand at the man stealthily approaching Yuna, a resounding gunshot shatters the air, propelling the stand out of her grasp. Glancing behind her, she finds herself confronted by another villain, firmly holding a menacing firearm. Before she can react, the man lunges towards her, seizing her tightly. In a moment of desperation, Yuna unleashes her mana, conjuring a shimmering blue barrier that materializes between her and the assailant. The force of her power propels him backward, his momentum halted. Brandishing a gleaming cleaver, he wears a smirk of astonishment at the extent of mana possessed by such a young child. Thoughts of profiting from her potential value cross his mind, fueling his sinister intentions. Slashing at the protective dome, he futilely attempts to breach its impenetrable defense. Observing the failed assault, Yuna's confidence surges as she believes she can withstand his onslaught, drawing from the techniques taught to her by Yuna. Yet, in the blink of an eye, the villain drops his cleaver, his hand effortlessly passing through the barrier, inching menacingly towards Yuna. In an instant, he clutches her, a twisted grin etching across his face. Down on the ground floor, the players affiliated with the Shinra clan arrive on the scene, their presence now evident. Without delay, their attention is diverted towards a portal from which emerges a formidable rank S monster known as the Swamp Slime. Witnessing a reckless player attempting to strike the slime, their leader swiftly commands their team to retreat, emphasizing the futility of physical attacks against the creature. Instead, they urge the ranged attackers to regroup. On the 5th floor, Julietta's gaze fixes upon the man brazenly seizing Yuna. Reacting swiftly, she compels him to release his grip by unleashing a scorching fire attack. Urging Yuna to flee, she raises her voice, imploring her companion to find safety. However, in the next heartbeat, another villain materializes by Julietta's side, compelling her to divert her attention to this new threat. Quickly taking off her heels, she releases a lightning-fast attack, narrowly missing her opponent's head. Witnessing the sudden increase in her attack's intensity, he understands that she has an amplification gift. The villain chases after Yuna, his breath heavy and exhaustion evident. Mockingly, he urges her to surrender, insinuating that she must be fatigued as well. Yet, in the next moment, his surprise is palpable as Yuna harnesses her mana, propelling herself effortlessly to the top of the aisle. With precision, she hurls projectiles at the villain, forcing him to seek refuge behind a defensive barrier. Growing increasingly annoyed, he delivers a powerful kick to the aisle, causing Yuna to lose her footing and hurtle towards the floor. Seizing the opportunity, he channels mana through his hands, preparing to launch an attack. However, to his astonishment, Yuna collides into him with her own protective barrier, compelling him to hastily deploy his own defense at the last possible moment. Drawing from her memories of Julietta's techniques, Yuna intertwines her mana with her hand, shaping it into a condensed form. With a swift release, she unleashes a mana bomb towards the bewildered villain. Meanwhile, the villain engaged in combat with Julietta witnesses Yuna's abrupt emergence from the ruined store, realizing his teammate has been incapacitated by a young girl. In the blink of an eye, a crimson magic circle materializes at Julietta's feet. Tentacles emerge from the circle, ensnaring her legs and rendering her immobile. Seizing the opportunity, the villain creeps up behind her, brandishing a knife menacingly close to her face. Addressing Yuna, who wields the bat, he warns that any closer and he will end Julietta's life. Without warning, another assailant sneaks up behind Yuna, viciously slamming her head into the floor, causing fractures to appear. As her vision blurs, mana bursts forth from her, propelling the villain backward. Witnessing her mana surge exponentially, the individual holding Julietta stabs her in the stomach with a knife, hoisting her over his shoulders. As the assailant behind her delivers another blow to Yuna's head, causing her to descend towards the floor, she contemplates her own weakness, lamenting her inability to save Julietta. However, in the next moment, Yuna finds herself transported to a blank white expanse. A voice echoes, inquiring if she yearns for power. Yet, a memory appears, recalling Yuna's advice to never listen to that voice, as he promised to fulfill all her desires. He wishes for her to live a normal, happy life. Recalling her promise, Yuna apologizes silently in her heart, recognizing that she also has people she wants to protect. As the assailant attempts to strike her once more while rising to his feet, her eyes turn golden, as she murmurs that she needs power. But in the next second, she stands there in shock as Bruno swiftly punches the villain, sending him reeling backward. Bruno covers her with his coat, commending her for her efforts but instructing her to leave the rest to him. The villain curses his luck as he watches Bruno approach with an intense gaze, only to be astounded when Bruno suddenly materializes in front of him. With tremendous force, he slams the villain's head against the wall behind him. As the man slides down the wall, unconscious, Bruno tends to Julietta. The villain who had previously attacked Yuna rises once more and swings a knife at Bruno's back, only to receive a powerful backhand punch to the face. Walking over to the fallen man, Bruno clenches his fist and delivers a crushing blow, asserting that for what they did to Yuna and Julietta, the villain deserves to pay with his life. A few days prior to the mall incident, we find Noname confronting another man. The second individual berates him, claiming he carried out every order given, alluding to the Mount Buckhan incident. He screams, demanding to know what else he must do, threatening to kill Noname and then Gil Sungjun. Yet, in the next moment, he feels a knife piercing his chest. Turning around, he sees Noname standing behind him, wielding a unique gift known as Disorder, which disrupts the opponent's perception. This explains why he was unable to locate Noname's true position before being stabbed. Noname proceeds to hang the second man with a rope, revealing that he was also responsible for the presumed suicide of Sublord Kim Kyumwon. Back at the Dawn Mall's distribution warehouse, the leader approaches his subordinates, pointing towards the captured individuals and inquiring if that is everyone. They respond that the Shinra clan arrived swiftly, necessitating a hasty retreat. One of the underlings points behind him, questioning who the child is. Surprised, the leader turns around to see Yuna standing calmly behind him, shocking him to the core. The underling realizes that the child arrived on his own and approaches him, drawing his weapon. In the next second, Yuna calmly separates the man's head from his shoulders, employing his mana-infused sword. All the villains present stare in disbelief, then rush to attack Yuna. However, the leader intervenes, shouting at them not to underestimate him simply because he is a child. Observing this, Yuna mockingly taunts them, deriding their subservience to a brute. He continues to taunt them, questioning if they are truly frightened by a child wielding a knife. Enraged by the insults, the villains all charge at him, but Yuna smirks and activates his skill, Heavenly Steps. Within an instant, he darts through their ranks, slashing them with precision, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. Standing at the front, amidst the scattered and lifeless bodies, Yuna points his sword at the leader. With an ominous expression in his emotionless eyes, he warns the man that if he doesn't come forward, he will be forced to attack first. The leader grits his teeth, muttering impossible under his breath, sweating at the realization that a child has defeated multiple players ranked above B in an instant. Thinking quickly, he understands that he cannot attack the child head-on, wondering if this is someone applying for the 12 thrones. He activates his gift, intending to pass Yuna while in his invisible state. Yet, in the next second, Yuna lazily looks directly at him, leaping up and launching a strike imbued with his mana at the man. After the incident, ambulances and rescue forces arrived at the scene. Shin Seoyoung mentions how the entire place has been destroyed, and Yuna asks her to take responsibility this time as well. She reminds him that he is already indebted to her. Awkwardly, he looks away and mentions that he will repay her someday. With one last thing on his mind, he hurries over to Non-Aim, curious about his identity. As he removes the villain's black shades, both he and Seoyoung comment on his unattractive and flattened face before Yuna quickly places the glasses back on him. He hears his sister's voice and looks over to see her being carried by Bruno, walking alongside Giulietta. Observing that they appear well, he is relieved and quickly runs over to his sister. In a dimly lit room, a red-haired man with a piercing on his lower lip sits. He watches the news report on the Dawn Mall incident and how Shin Seoyoung, along with the Silly Clan, foiled the terrorist attack by the organization Non-Aim. The individual sees the video of Yuna embracing his sister and says with an excited smirk, "Found you." A few days later, Yuna meets Shin Seoyoung at Haeung's father's cafe. He notices a barrier surrounding the entire cafe, preventing others from recognizing them. Yuna inwardly acknowledges Shin Seoyoung as the Divine Tempest, known as one of the best casters. Shin Seoyoung informs him that the Non-Aim group will be sentenced to death. Yuna brings up the bigger problem of who hired them, to which she simply replies that she isn't in a position to disclose that information. He then asks about the Sebiok group. She mentions that President Lee Yoon-hee has returned to management, and the successors have decided to temporarily halt their plans and focus on social welfare work. As she leaves, he contemplates how the future of the Sebiok group has also changed. In his previous life, a succession war took place among the president's 3 sons, with the eldest eventually emerging as the victor. He reflects on the recent events, his family surviving the Kraken incident, Yuna activating her miracle, the kindergarten kids who didn't die, the Mount Bukhan incident resulting in fewer casualties, the Non-Aim attack that didn't occur previously, and the Sebiok group's succession war that didn't occur. Realizing that the future is changing, he thinks about his deceased teammates who perished in the dungeon abyss and Lee Yu-jung. With a joyful expression, he realizes that all that tragedy will now never happen. During dinner that night, Yuna announces to their parents that she wants to become a player. Hearing this, Yuna spits out his food. Feeling as if the world is crumbling around him, he once again understands how much the future has changed. Slamming his cutlery on the table, Yuna immediately opposes her decision. His sister looks at him with a sorrowful expression, and he mentions that becoming a player doesn't suit her. She argues that she won't know unless she tries and mentions that she has a gift as well. He explains that he didn't teach her how to control her mana to become a player, but to prevent her from suffering any adverse effects due to her high mana levels. He wishes for her to live a long and happy life. He questions her reasons for wanting to become a player, noting that a player's life is neither honorable nor extravagant but filled with troubles. She shouts that she wants to become someone who can save others too. Yuna listens with a broken expression as she expresses her frustration with hiding behind others and feeling powerless. Their mother intervenes, giving her approval with a smile. Hearing this, Yuna exclaims in surprise, startling his younger sibling Yuni. Despite the pain of seeing his sibling cry because of him, he asks his parents if they are okay with Yuna becoming a player. While they acknowledge the danger and are uncomfortable with the idea, they express their desire for her to pursue what makes her happy. As Yuna thanks their parents and the three of them smile, Yuna looks at the scene with a worried expression. In a meeting room, the individuals discuss the terrorist attack on Dawn Mall. They talk about the hierarchy of the Sebyok group, with the first and second sons being the actual contenders for succession. The eldest son, Lee Byung-in, is a hot-tempered ruffian who won't succeed solely because of his birthright. The second son, Lee Jeong-in, possesses a good personality and excellent management skills. It is revealed that the terrorist attack was ordered by Lee Byung-in. The mall was under the management of Lee Jeong-in. As a result, the chairman decided to come out of retirement and take charge of the group. Speculations are voiced regarding the involvement of the Ocean Clan in the attack. It is discovered that the mana stones used to fuel the mana disturbance were taken from the hounds who perished in the Mount Bukhan incident. And coincidentally, 70% of these stones were in the possession of the Ocean Clan. They also discuss the news of Shin Seoyoung, the Ocean Clan's divine tempest, discovering her husband's affair with the female heir of the Dungan group. Naturally, she was furious. Some members say that even though the Ocean Clan has the divine tempest, they also have a member of the 12 thrones in their clan, the Thunder Emperor. However, others argue that the Thunder Emperor is still young and cannot compare to Shin Seoyoung. Ultimately, they decide not to go to war with the Ocean Clan but instead support the second son, Lee Jeong-in. This way, they can take revenge against the Ocean Clan, which is currently backing the eldest son, Lee Byung-in. On the first day of their second grade in elementary school, Yuna is surprised to find that their entire group has been assigned to the same class once again. Siona expresses her joy, mentioning her concerns about being separated. Thinking inwardly, Yuna feels a sense of relief that Jin Sena is in a different class this time, glad to be spared from seeing her again. However, Yoonhyuk draws Yunha's attention to another group of 4 boys who have been continuously staring at them. Yoonhyuk suggests giving them a beating, but Yunha advises against escalating the situation, wanting to avoid making matters worse. As Yuna glances at the group, they quickly look away. Observing this, Kim Minji asks if Yuna isn't going to clarify the misunderstanding, noting that the entire school is now scared of him due to his father's fight with Jin Sena's father. Wondering when he and his dad became such scary figures, he admits that it's not entirely a misunderstanding. Still, Siona expresses her worry for his well-being. At that moment, Yuna comments on Yoonhyuk's significant height increase, remembering about how small he used to be. Yoonhyuk attributes his growth to his training and the drinks prepared by Haeyang's father. Recalling how he advised his friends to drink them, Yuna now realizes that aside from replenishing their mana, they might have also contributed to their height increase. Disappointed that he is now the shortest among his friends, he thinks about drinking a glass every day as well. Just then, their homeroom teacher, Do-hoon, arrives and introduces himself. While Do-hoon addresses the class, Yuna secretly observes his teacher's mana flow, realizing that he is not a normal individual. In another room, an elderly man, the same one whose library Haeyang stumbled upon, receives a report from his subordinate. He is informed that the parents who requested Jin Seona's expulsion have been taken care of. The report also mentions KK Pharmaceuticals' attempt to interfere with the class placement. That failed. Additionally, they inform him that an ex-player, retired due to a severe injury, has been assigned as the teacher of their class. This teacher used to be a part of the Regulars Agency, the same clan that received an S-rank rating. The old man recalls a conversation with Haeyang, whom he treats as his own grandchild, where she expressed her wish to be in the same class as her friends but considered it impossible. In response, the old man promised to grant her wish. Fondly remembering these happy memories, the old man smiles to himself, fascinated by how he now treats a child as his own grandchild. In an abandoned warehouse away from the residential area, Yuna and his sister await someone. Yuna asks how Yuna knows this person, to which he replies that he met her at the Happiness Cafe. Suddenly, a voice echoes through the space, commenting on the huge amount of dust. Small cyclones form, dispersing the dust. Moments later, Shin Seoyoung appears before them. Yuna is overwhelmed with excitement at meeting one of the 12 thrones, while Yuna nonchalantly comments that she is late. Breaking free from her thoughts, Yuna bows and greets her, and Seoyoung requests that they refrain from using her title and simply call her big sister Seoyoung. Observing Yuna's mana quantity in control, Seoyoung wonders what would happen if the others were to learn of her presence. Still, she will be the one to teach her eventually. She then hands Yuna the device and magic stone he requested. Retrieving the device from its storage, Yuna presents his sister with the sword. He acknowledges her decision to become a player but reminds her that she still needs to pass the test. Concerned for his sister, Seoyoung finds Yuna cute. With Yuna prepared, he tosses the magic stone into the distance. As it shatters, it reveals a cute 8th rank monster, Pororo. Unexpectedly, Yuna calmly asks his sister to kill it in an emotionless tone. Yuna knows that he can't change his sister's mind, but now that she's determined, she must face the harsh reality of a player's life. Unaware of the danger, Yuna lets her guard down, forcing Yuna to intervene and protect her when the monster attacks her. The 8th rank creature falls unconscious, its true form revealed with a disfigured face. He turns back, warning her not to judge monsters by their appearance and to be cautious, as a lack of care could lead to her death. Yuna stands there, hands trembling, head lowered in sadness. Yuna asks if she wants to continue. Reflecting on how Yuna and Julieta protected her before, she reaffirms her belief in becoming someone who protects others as well. Determined not to let Yuna shoulder the burdens alone, she stands tall, holding her sword in front of her. Moments later, Yuna wears a tense expression, her hand shaking as purple blood drips from the sword. Suddenly, her legs give out and she releases her grip on the weapon. Yuna rushes forward to comfort the sobbing Yuna, while Shin Seoyoung marvels at her success after 15 attempts. She recalls the challenges she faced to reach her current position. Seoyoung is surprised that Yuna made his sister kill a monster on her first try, muttering to herself about how scary he is. A few days later, in class, their teacher Do-hoon hands out milk cartons to all the students. Hearing his classmates expressing their distaste for milk, Yuna remembers Bikreon, the girl he taught in his previous life, who also disliked milk. Just then, Yoonhyuk places a magic item in his hand that transforms regular milk into chocolate milk. He proudly admits to secretly buying it at the stationery shop that day. Witnessing his complete disregard for rules, Yuna realizes that perhaps he has affected him too much. Observing the prayer on the back of the milk cartons for the suffering people in Italy, Yuna remembers his past life. During break, as he walks to his sister's class, he recalls her initial attempts at killing a monster, feeling bad for forcing her to such experiences. Suddenly, he is bumped into by a 6th grader. Recognizing him as a lower grade student, the 6th graders ask him to apologize. Observing the boy in front of him, he realizes he's facing a young Lee Kang-hyuk. In his previous life, Lee Kang-hyuk ruled over Sungbuk District's back alleys. Though not a skilled player, he excelled at exploiting others' weaknesses and managing his subordinates, granting him access to all information in the district. Looking at him now, Yuna understands that Lee Kang-hyuk had lived in this district since a young age. Just as one of his lackeys shoves Yuna from behind, a crowd gathers, and Lee Kang-hyuk lifts Yuna by his collar, raising his fist, while Yuna wonders how much he should punish them. However, before the punch lands, a loud slap echoes through the air. It turns out Yuna, who has just arrived, struck Lee Kang-hyuk with a mana-infused hand. Seeing her, Lee Kang-hyuk starts sweating nervously, taking steps back as she mentions how she told him not to bully others anymore. Observing Kang-hyuk's expression, Yuna realizes that he may have a crush on his sister. Yuna looks at him with killing intent brimming in his eyes. Yuna pushes him away, stating that he was bothering her brother. Kang-hyuk's behavior completely changes, and he starts acting polite towards Yuna, referring to him as his little brother and offering to help him if anyone bothers him at school. Later, as the two walk alone, Yuna asks his sister if she likes Kang-hyuk. Hearing the question, she smiles slightly and then turns around, stating that she likes her brother the most. Surprised by her answer, Yuna looks away, feeling embarrassed. A few days ago, we see Grandma carrying groceries back to her house in the rain. Passing by an alley, she hears sounds from inside. Curious, she walks closer and removes the lid of a trash can, discovering a blue-haired demi-human child sitting inside. Startled, he wakes up and falls out of the trash can. Scared upon seeing Grandma, he starts to back away, clearly traumatized by how humans have treated him. Unable to leave him in that state, the child opens his eyes to find Grandma holding her umbrella over him. She offers him a place to go if he doesn't have anywhere else. Currently, Yuna and his family are visiting Grandma. Seeing the kids hugging Grandma, Mom complains about how Yuna only acts like a child in front of Grandma, causing him to pause in guilt. Grandma tells Mom that even after giving birth to 3 kids, she is still a child herself and jokingly mentions how Dad has his hands full. Then, she notices the cute little girl standing behind Mom. As she cuddles with Yuna, Grandma mentions that everyone must be hungry, and they all enter the house. Upon entering, Yuna senses a monster-like presence in the house and asks his sister to wait. Still, he remains calm. Guessing that it may be a thief, Yuna silently advances forward with his sister. Seeing the being inside the house, he jumps forward to attack. The elders hear a crash and quickly enter the house, finding a shocked Yuna pointing at the demi-human and asking what Jin Pairing is doing there. Observing how Jin Pairing rudely addresses his grandma at the dinner table, something snaps inside Yuna. Anger washes over him as he recalls his initial impression of Jin as a crazy dog. Addressing Grandma, Yuna asks if he can play outside with his big brother Jin. With Grandma's approval and joy that the two boys are getting along, Yuna drags Jin outside, exiting through the main gate and tosses Jin onto the road. As Jin sees his chicken piece lying on the dirty road, he becomes angry. He shouts that one shouldn't disturb a dog when it's eating, snapping his fingers to create a mana barrier, preventing others from listening in. Yuna addresses Jin, saying that he isn't a dog. However, based on Jin's earlier actions, he doesn't seem human either. Holding a Pepsi bottle, Yuna approaches Jin with a deadly gleam in his eyes, declaring that he will help Jin live like a human. Witnessing this, Jin Pairing prepares to fight, expressing his initial dislike for Yuna. But in the next instant, Yuna appears in front of him and strikes Jin's shoulders, delivering a series of hits while scolding Jin for his disrespect towards the person who saved him, fed him, and allowed him to stay in her house. Yuna catches his breath and continues to strike, noting how Jin's manners seem to have left him. Addressing the crying Jin, Yuna mentions that no matter how much he shouts, no one will hear him unless he can use telepathy. Jin exclaims that he's only 10 years old and questions how he could possibly use telepathy. Hearing this, Yuna remembers a memory from his previous life, Jin showing off his ability to use telepathy from age 10. Realizing he has been tricked, Jin understands that this is yet another reason why he deserves punishment. Yuna approaches the down Jin once again, asking if they should have some fun. Jin, confused, questions if he hasn't already been punished enough. Yuna's response is to strike him again. The following day, Jin Pairing feels pain all over his body. He realizes that Yuna only hit him in places that aren't visible. As Mom and Dad discuss which class Jin should be admitted to, he declares that he won't be attending school. However, upon seeing Yuna calmly watching him with an emotionless look, Jin immediately agrees to go to school. Yuna gets up, recalling Jin's stories of being bullied in school, and suggests to his mom that Jin should be admitted to the 2nd grade, all the while maintaining a cold, inhumane gaze fixed on Jin. When Mom asks for Jin's opinion, he has no choice but to agree. With Yuna beside him, his behavior swiftly changes as he acts excited, mentioning how they will be able to go to school together as brothers. Observing this, the elders remark on the boys' close friendship, unaware of Jin Pairing's frightened state. Jin wonders if others can't see that he's actually being threatened, considering Yuna has had both hands on his shoulders the entire time. With the matter seemingly settled, Yuna starts dragging Jin outside, stating that they will play together, wearing a smile. Meanwhile, Jin is inwardly screaming with fright. Goddess Lim Ga-yul is currently having a meeting with the Italian ambassadors. They have offered assistance in bringing back the 4,000 Koreans stuck in Italy, but in return, they request Korea's help in dealing with a monstrous creature in the North Atlantic, the Leviathan. While Lim Ga-yul expected this, she is still surprised by their request. She tries to propose potions as an alternative, but the Italians firmly disagree. In a fit of rage, Janko smashes the table, causing her bodyguards to step in. Janko proceeds to insult Lim Ga-yul and the Koreans. In response, Lim Ga-yul unleashes a powerful pressure onto the ambassadors, causing them to nearly fall out of their chairs. Rising from her seat, she reluctantly agrees to their demands, stating that Korea will send the divine spear Namgung Sungwoon along with 2 more players from the 12 thrones. With a snap of her fingers, the pressure dissipates. The Italian ambassadors take deep breaths, still reeling from the encounter. Janko, filled with anger, threatens to kill them and unsheathes his sword. However, both he and Lim Ga-yul feel a chilling aura enveloping the room, warning them that any attack will result in their own death. Glancing back at them, Lim Ga-yul says that they seem to possess some intelligence. She then declares the end of the meeting. In the Blue House office, one of her bodyguards criticizes her recklessness and advises her to take better care of herself. Interrupting him, she questions Park Sang-un whether he is speaking as her bodyguard or as the manager of actress Lim Ga-yul. He remains silent, prompting the other bodyguard to playfully tease him and call him a coward. Hearing this, Lim Ga-yul scolds Lee Young-hyun as well. Next, she decides to return the gift sent by Big Mama of Italy. Despite it being a gesture of friendlier relations, she understands that Big Mama is not a friendly person. Wondering about Big Mama's intentions in sending 2 hooligans as ambassadors, she orders Lee Young-hun to find trustworthy individuals to keep an eye on the Italian ambassadors during their stay and report any issues that may arise. Getting up, Park Sung-jin comments that fortunately, the deal was successful. Lim Ga-yul acknowledges this and expresses her gratitude to engineer Jeong Sik-hoon and the Alice group for their potions. Park Sung-jin once again voices his concern over the way she handled the meeting, calling it too dangerous. Giving him a cold glance, she questions whether he is speaking as her bodyguard. Seeing him remain silent, she chuckles and remarks that the divine spear was nearby in case any problems had come up, ensuring her safety. On the road, Julieta walks happily, thinking about her appointment with the doctor where she was informed that she is 6 weeks pregnant. She calls Bruno, asking him to meet her. Behind her, Yuna and his friend cross the road. Julieta wonders how she will break the happy news to Bruno during their lunch meeting. Just then, she hears someone call out her name. Worried, she looks ahead and sees Janko. Glancing behind her, she notices that the path is blocked. Suddenly, Janko grabs her face, declaring that it's time for the bluebird to return to its cage. Bruno's phone rings, and he sees Julieta calling once again. Answering the call, he hears her voice, calmly thanking him for everything and telling him not to look for her anymore. Sitting in the car after hanging up, Julieta breaks down in tears while Janko laughs at her. He remarks that she made the right choice, as the person she loves deserves to live a happy and normal life. Moments earlier, Yuna observes Janko escorting Julieta to a car. Recognizing Janko Myron, he is surprised and wonders what the Tredisai is doing here. He realizes that the negotiations between Korea and Italy must have taken place around this time. He remembers Lim Ga-yul's orders to bring back the Koreans in Italy, and to deploy 3 members of the 12 thrones. As a result, Korea suffered a significant decrease in its fighting forces. The divine spear Namgung Sungwoon returned with a missing arm. The railgun Shim Young-won became permanently disabled due to the side effects of Mana Berserk, and the florist Bang Yeonji lost her life during the mission. However, that is what people initially believed. In reality, Bang Yeonji was held captive in Italy by Janko Myron. Upon discovering this, numerous countries, including Korea, launched protests, and the situation was resolved after Big Mama executed Janko. Yuna strictly instructs Kim Minji not to follow him and chases after the car as it turns a corner. As he reaches the corner, he sees that the car has stopped, and both Janko and his friend are waiting for him. It turns out they had sensed his presence earlier. Janko quickly slaps Yuna's face, and Yuna barely manages to block the attack, skidding back onto the road. Surprised that the young boy was able to block his attack, Janko proceeds to attack, attempting to kill him. Astonished by Janko's ferocity, Yuna still manages to dodge his attacks. Yuna retaliates with a powerful mana bomb, but Janko brushes it off. In the next instant, Janko appears behind Yuna, catching him off guard. Janko grabs him by the neck, lifting him up, using mana to prevent his escape. Realizing that he will soon run out of breath, Yuna understands that he quickly needs to find a way to escape. That was it. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe for future content.